Hello again, YouTube. It's me, Viking Squid. Because the miter saw is a very versatile tool, and it's a great addition to a backyard wood shop. It allows you to cut trim. Also, with a miter saw, you could very easily put crown molding in your house, because the miter saw allows you to cut the angles that it takes to put those sorts of trims in your house. And not only will I show you the miter saw, but I'll show you some of the blades that go with the miter saw, and show you a way to store your blades so they last longer. And then I'll also show you ways to use your miter saw. The long stock tends to bow, which could cause problems in cutting, so you want to be able to hold it up. And I'll show you a couple different ways that you can handle that problem. Okay, here I have my Delta saw mounted in what I call a sawbuck. It's a device that I made out of wood that gives me, level with the table, an extension to both sides for handling long stock. The saw actually sits down in here, and I'll show you how, now that I have it mounted in the sawbuck, how to turn the blade. You just take the handle, loosen it, push the button, and turn it, and you decide where you want to do it. That right there is the 22.5 degree angle, and so forth. This is simply a miter saw. All it does is cut miters for you. Now, that sawbuck right there is what you probably want to build you to go with your miter saw, because it's a handy piece of equipment to have to make your miter saw more versatile. However, if you don't want to spend the money, I'll show you another way with the Ryobi saw that you can do it even cheaper than building a sawbuck. This one here is made by a different company. This one here is made by Ryobi. But the biggest difference between this one and the other one is right down here. I'm going to see if I can get a good shot of it. It's that right there. This. That is my compound feature on this compound miter saw. What that means is I'm able to tilt the blade. And I do that using this knob right here. I loosen that knob and I turn it, reading off of this scale right here, to get the amount of tilt I want. And like the Delta, it also turns to both sides. You loosen this knob and push that button and it turns. So this one is known as a compound miter saw. If you don't have a sawbuck, you can easily do a setup like I've got right here. What I've done is I've taken a piece of plywood about, I don't know, 36 inches long by 18 inches wide, and I've screwed me on a couple of 2x4s that are screwed together on each side. The saw sits in the middle, and then on the end I took another piece of plywood that's roughly 12 inches by 16 inches, and I've screwed some more 2x4s. Now you could use this and it'll work, because the tops of these 2x4s are level with the top of the tabletop, so anything that you lay across there will be good and straight. And the good thing about these, using a system like this, is you can actually take this piece and move it as far away or as close as you need it to be to make it work. But a sawbuck, like I have right over there, really works better. Blades for a miter saw are as varied as anything else in this world. I've got different blades here. This one right here has 80 teeth to it as this one does. However, they're not the same, and I'll show you why. See the way that the teeth are going on this one? They're hooked. This one works good for cutting trim, whereas this one right here, see how the teeth are not hooked? They're kind of straight. This one works better for cutting laminated stuff. So like if I'm working on cabinets and I want to cut a baseboard or a backsplash that has plastic laminate on it, this is the blade I'm going to use. This also has 80 teeth on it, so it's a real fine cut. Now this blade has 72 teeth on it, and they're hooked the same. It's for the same purpose as the red blade that I showed you from Freud. Has the teeth hooked the same way, but it won't give you as fine a cut as the one with 80 teeth. Now this one, which came from the saw maker Ryobi, and I've never used it because I just don't really care for this blade, would work good if all you were wanting to do was to cut 2x4s and get them the right length. Because this one right here for trim work won't give you, because it only has 40 teeth on it, it won't give you a good smooth cut for doing trim work. Now this one right here is for doing flooring, for cross cutting, and it has no carbide teeth. It does really good for cutting if you're laying in like a wood plank floor. That's the blade you want to use because that's what it's designed for. And this one right here is an abrasive blade, and it's made for cutting metal. Now you don't normally put these on a miter saw. You normally put these on a chop saw, but I like to keep one just in case, because every once in a while I like to cut stuff like rebar, and this is the kind of blade I use to do that. As you can see, I've made this simple wooden device out of a couple pieces of plywood with a carriage bolt that I use to keep my blades. Now, keeping them on something like this, use a washer so that you don't damage your blade, and then when you put the nut on, don't make it real tight, just make it snug, because you do not want to warp your blades. So I just spin it on till it stops and leave it alone. I like this because I can carry it around, and the way that I made this is I cut a dado into plywood and I just glued another piece of plywood in it. It works very well for storing my blades. I have another one of these just like that I put the blades on when they're dull, and then I send them to my friend who has a sharpening business, and he sharpens them for me and gives me a very reasonable price. It's a lot cheaper than buying new blades. I just give him the whole thing and he brings it back to me with the blades on it just like they were when they left, only sharp.